This law is an apartheid law. Only one kind of lives matters by this law, only the lives of the Jews. The Palestinian life doesn't matter. It was a celebration of death, a celebration of blood, a celebration of fascism and apartheid. Governments can be changed, but when these inhuman values are internalized and spreaded among the general public, this is the big catastrophe. In the last election, through the campaign, Ben-Gvir, this fascist minister, was running his campaign in one of the markets, and his people were running around him, and one of them started chanting, "Death for Arabs, death for Arabs." Suddenly, Ben-Gvir stopped and looked at him and yelled at him and said to him, "No, death for terrorists," not meaning, don't say death for Arabs, death for terrorists. And the guy immediately understood the hint in Ben-Gvir. Why I'm mentioning this? Because this law is exactly the translation of that event. He actually is eager for death and for blood against the Palestinians. But he needed to do it in a way that will be accepted by the majority. Saying immediately death for Arabs wouldn't have been accepted. It was brought for the primary reading by one of of Ben-Gvir members of faction, Son Har-Melech, and it was not by chance that they chose her. She herself in the past was a victim of an attack of Palestinians, and she lost her husband in this attack, and she was chosen to promote this law in order also to bring more, let's say, solidarity and support from the people. During the deliberations in the committee, it was very clear that most of the professional people who represent the public sector of different ministries were against that law and said it very clearly. Minister of Justice, Minister of Law in Israel was against that law. And he understood that it's going to create a problem for the state. But still, Minister of so-called National Security, Ben-Gvir, and his faction were pushing for it. Netanyahu needed to keep his coalition together, and Ben-Gvir extorted him or was putting pressure on him to push for that law. We understood that Ben-Gvir is putting pressure on Netanyahu and connecting the voting on his law to the voting on the state budget. The state budget, if it wasn't authorized until the 31st of March, the Knesset will be dissolved and we will go to election. And Netanyahu didn't want that, so he paid the price. He agreed to pass the law. The atmosphere in the plenary that day cannot be described, actually. It was awful. It was a celebration of death, a celebration of blood, a celebration of fascism and apartheid. I've been 11 years in the Knesset. I had my tears only in 2 occasions. I was on tears. When the Jewish nation state law passed and when this law passed. And I think it's not by chance that on those 2 occasions, I had tears in my eyes. Those 2 laws are connected. The Jewish nation state law says very clearly they are denying our connection as Palestinians to our homeland. They are denying our right as Palestinians in this homeland. They are denying our humanity even. We are not mentioned. We are invisible in the Jewish nation state law. When I was elected to the Knesset, I didn't think that part of my meetings will be discussing what is better, injection of poison or hanging in a rope or using other ways. That was part of the discussions in the committee. And to tell you, that was awful. That was inhuman. And they enjoyed it. This law was promoted on the background of the 7th of October attack and used the feelings of the Israelis and the fear of the Israelis at that point in order to create a kind of support to that law. The Jewish Israelis should be against that law more than I am, because it reflects what kind of a society creates such a law. Legislations of any nation, of any state, is a reflection of the values that exist there. This shows what kind of a judiciary system or legislative system you exist in such kind of a society. The representatives of the so-called security forces in Israel said very clearly that 80% of the cases, if a Palestinian was acting or suspected to be acting as a military action, they execute him on the spot, 80%. So you can imagine that they don't need such a law in order to kill. So people are really terrorized of that idea, and I think the anger is piling up. Those who legislated the law were claiming that this will take out the incentive from the Palestinians to act on military actions. I don't think so. I think it creates more anger and might lead to more deterioration and violent actions. History has shown that the more oppression of occupation exists, the more resistance there is. Sometimes people ask us, why do you appeal to the Supreme Court? Do you have a lot of hope of the Supreme Court? The same question can be asked, why did we approach the international and the different states? We have seen in 2 years of a genocide, the world not taking a real action. But we are still fighting on that arena and asking them to do. This is part also of holding the different states accountable for their policies. It looks like we are the only ones who still believe that there is an international law and we are trying to protect it, because we understand that the minute that this law vanishes, then it is a wild world, and there is no other way to protect those who are violated in the world.